Hi, my friend. What do I put here? Hi,
Hey
my friend.
João, how are you?
I'm great. What about you?
I'm fine. Great
Mm,
night. Beautiful night here.
that's great. So, guys, we're here for the 90th night of study of this amazing book, Paul and Stephen. Tonight, our great friend Nora, she will not be here with us. She's not going to attend the study, but she will be with us in prayers and spirit. And next week she'll be back here with us. We have loads of interesting and emotional things to talk about tonight. This chapter 8, the death of Stephen, is a very, very emotional chapter. We're gonna have here very important parts for the rest of the book, and we are very happy to bring this information tonight. Before we start, I'm gonna bring tonight the prayer since Nora is not here, and we can get more relaxed, calmer, and then we can properly start talking about the book. Okay. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Great. Guys, so today, since Nora is not here, I'm gonna start talking about the book. Then Daniel will come, and then we'll talk some more again. Okay, this will be the dynamic of tonight. So we're on chapter 8, which is called the death of Stephen. Last week we stopped in the following contest. Stephen was about to be judged by Saul of Tarsus, and we have been talking about that a lot lately. We saw that Abigail, without knowing that Stephen was actually her brother, Jazel, told Saul that he should try to give the prisoner one more chance to save himself from death penalty. Without knowing anything, she felt like saying that to him. Saul said that he would do that. He promised her he would do that. Since early that day, there had been unusual movement. Emmanuel is telling us this in the highest tribunal of Israel. The execution of the preacher of the way was the subject of extensive discussion. Saul had decided that no follower of the way could attend to the execution. As we've seen before, when the followers of the way attended those spectacles, they were making much noise and they were disturbing the place, and Saul got very, very mad. Stephen looked quite disfigured, Emmanuel tells us, though his face reflected his inwardly serenity. His appearance showed the heavy physical torment that he had been inflicted, and all those dungeon darkness that he had been through. Aside from that, and this is very interesting because we will see in this part of the book Saul of Tarsus talking a lot about this. Stephen's eyes display the same brilliance of crystal clear kindness. Amid general curiosity, Saul of Tarsus looked at him pleased. At last, Stephen would pay for his incomprehension and insults. When Saul read the indictment, he remembered his promise to Abigail that he would give the prisoner one more chance. And before pronouncing the final sentence, he asked the soldiers to shove the prisoner to his bench, where he looked at Stephen and asked, "Would you be willing now to swear against the Nazarene carpenter? Remember that this is your last chance to save your life." Stephen replied, "Do not insult the Savior." To die for Jesus means glory when we know that he offered himself on the cross for all humankind. This is very nice. The crowd started to scream, "Stone him right now." They got really mad. Armed men had to intervene so that the young man from Corinth, Stephen, would not be torn in pieces right then and there by the furious and delirious mob. They got really mad. Stephen was almost naked and feeling much pain. This part of the book is really emotional because we see that Stephen, although he was fulfilled with faith, he was feeling really distressed. He was feeling pain. He was weak. He was in a very difficult position back then. He understood that the last moments of his life were drawing to a close. The humiliation hurted him deeply, but he remembered Simon's description of Jesus in his final distress. In front of Herod, Christ had suffered the same abuse from the Jews. Therefore, why would he, Stephen, a fallible man and bearer of many weakness, hesitate at the moment of testimony? And with tears running down his lacerated face, he heard the this is so nice, guys. And with tears running down his lacerated face, he heard the tender voice of the Master in his heart. Let anyone who would share in my kingdom deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. This is very nice because when we look to Chico Xavier psychograph books, we see that in that biggest moment of sacrifice, all those disciples that were very truthful, honest, and just, they were received by the Christ in the spirituality. Stephen believed firmly that at the end of all his suffering, he would find glorious love of Jesus and the beauty of his immortal tenderness. Stephen started to remember all the things he had gone through. As we've seen, he in the book, he remembered all the things that his father went through, the humiliation, his house that went away, when his father set fire on that other property, all those things he started to remember. When he thought of Abigail, he felt a certain anguish in his heart. Now that he had to face that, he wished to see her again, to give her his final recommendations. And we see here that he wanted her to be a Christian. Stephen had barely left his sorrowful reminiscing when he heard Saul's voice addressing the guards. Saul said, "Shackle him again. It is over. Let us proceed to the atrium." When Stephen extended his wrists, this is very nice, guys, because Emmanuel brings us a very profound scene, and he really give us details here. Emmanuel tells us that when Stephen extended his wrists to receive the cuffs, he suffered such forceful blows from one unscrupulous soldier that the blood from his wounded wrists started to flow freely. But he did not make the slightest attempt to resist. Despite all that, he was feeling an unknown peace of spirit. That's very nice. At the back of that spacious country yard, Stephen was bound to a stake so that the stoning could start at the precise time appointed. So the stones were about to start. Another of from and the another order from Saul, and the execution began amid loud laughter. Each executioner aimed coolly at a chosen point. They were very cruel. General scorn followed each strike. One said, "Let's save the head to keep the show intense and interesting." Saul was feeling satisfied and comfortable as he appraised the people's reaction. This is very sad. In any case, the death of the preacher of Christ represented his first great triumph in winning the attention of Jerusalem and its prestigious political elite. But at the same time, he was really admired by Stephen's peace of soul. He was wondering, where could such peace come from? Stephen's tattered garments were glued to his body, plastered with blood and sweat. At this point, I will pass to Daniel, and then we'll Go ahead.
Thanks, João. So Stephen was then a martyr, and as his body took the blows, his mind connected to the safest place he had, and it was his past and his family. And this is interesting because you just said that he was remembering of all the suffering his all his family has been through, and now he thinks in his, let's say, last moments alive, he starts to think uh, the happy moments they had, and it was the safest place he had to think of. He started to think of his father and the prayers he used to do with his mother and his sister Abigail. And whenever a situation seemed to be unbearable, they would be taken to Psalm 23. And this time, not only did David's words were feeding his spirit, but also the lessons from Jesus. And I like to make a small comment here about this expression, his spirit. Now we are studying under the light of spiritism, and there's no such thing as uh, your spirit or my spirit or his spirit. We are these spirits. It's just a matter of accuracy of the language. But after all, this is unusual expression. So yeah, we are bodies. We are not bodies with spirits. We are spirits with bodies. So okay, he was being fed with the lessons from Jesus as well. And this is will be so strong as we'll see uh, right ahead. Stephen's final moments came in with the sensation of something torn in his soul and the relieving touch over his wounds. Then wonderful scenes unfolded before his eyes. Spiritual emissaries surrounded him, and Jesus appeared with open arms. Stephen beheld the Christ in all his splendor and exclaimed to everybody to hear, I see the heavens opened, and Christ resurrected in the grandeur of God. Saul at that moment looked at Stephen's eyes, and they were ecstatic and blazing. Abigail approached Saul, wearing a Greek-style tunic, beautiful as she always always would be, and that night that might have triggered some deep emotions in Saul, possibly considering some unknown serenity reigning the martyr's spirit. That torture brought to Abigail's memories the last time when she saw her brother. Unsettlement struck her heart as Stephen used his last breath to ask the Lord to forgive Saul. This is the epitome of the martyrdom of the Christians, is to think about the other, to be uh, in extreme pain and nevertheless consider the happiness of a brother. Never mind if that in that occasion they were enemies or even he was his persecution. When he turned his eyes to his persecutor, Abigail was there, and Stephen couldn't speak or identify she was if she was incarnated or not. And then Stephen fainted. I will comment that later, but this is so important. I like to point this out. Um, when he turned his eyes to Saul, Thinking about his forgiveness from God, he saw Abigail and he thought many things. And one of them was, is she here actually, or she's here as a spirit to take me to heaven? That means he was seeing the spirits, the spiritual emissaries, and Jesus. So he had this double vision. Abigail finally recognized Jesus. Saul wouldn't believe, but asked her to stay still as he called a high order functionary to take the prisoner to the priest's chamber with the excuse of extracting the repentance uh, um, in his final hour. Saul asked to serve fine wine to his friends so they celebrate his first victory and left with Abigail completely silent. And we see that contradiction inside Saul's heart. He was really happy and proud of his achievement, his first victory against the Christians, but he was also really deeply concerned about his relationship with Abigail. The assistants were ordered to leave the chamber, and Saul locked the door. Abigail came close to the dying man when he whispered her name. Imagine the chills that it might have caused. Saul was bewildered. So many questions like pride, prevention from God, losing his soulmate, and grieving that man for the rest of his life. He- Between so many thoughts, Abigail kissed Stephen's forehead, and finally she could engage a conversation with her missing brother, mailing about his visible martyrdom, his disfigured appearance, and his new name. Between gasps and sobbings, Stephen could explain how he got his new name and how he understood he was dying, but especially he spoke of Jesus and the immortality of the soul. And we see how clear they have in their thoughts, even in extreme situations. Those are we are talking about very strong and mature spirits. Abigail questioned how could a good master abandon a loyal servant, and got immediately admonished by Stephen's gaze. So, bro, that's with you again.
Yes, thank you. This is so nice, guy. This moment is so emotional. Um, when Abigail asked that about Jesus, and Jesus tells her that Christ that he was serving is much just and merciful. She embraced him tenderly, washed in abundant tears, and after a pause, when Stephen showed that he was in the final moment of physical life, he made a supreme effort to move and asked, "With whom shall I leave you?" He was very preoccupied with her. She pointed to Saul and told that he was his heart chosen one. Saul was petrified. Emmanuel tells us that Saul was petrified. Um, Stephen looked at him without any hate and said, "May God bless you both. Your betrothed is not my enemy, but a brother. Saul must be good and generous. He defended. This is so nice, guys. Stephen says he defended Moses to the end, and then Stephen prophesies when he meets Jesus, he will serve him with the same zeal. So nice. And he tells Abigail and to be a loving and faithful companion for him. After that, when Saul heard those last words, he went pale. Those last words, he went pale. He wanted Stephen to hate and curse him. That noble attitude was actually making him feel worse. He thought he would detest that Christ who seemed to be calling him everywhere. And this, at this point, is very nice because we see that Saul had made this reflection a couple of times that Christ was all around him. He thought he would detest the Christ who seemed to be calling him everywhere, even to the point of placing himself between him and his adored Abigail. And Emmanuel tells us that Saul could not bear in his worst dreams that he could have the love of his life, Abigail, being the sister of his greatest enemy. Um, and now, if he was to marry Abigail, they would probably never be happy. He would be the executioner, she would be the victim. Abigail, realizing that her brother was looking at her for the last time, exclaimed, Jazel, don't go, stay with us. We will never be separated. About to expire, he whispered, Death, this is so beautiful, guys. Death does not separate those who love each other. Abigail then did this beautiful prayer that I'll bring here. She said, Lord, Lord God, Father of those who weep, of the sad you oppressed, fortress of the defeated, comfort in all pain, despite the bitter misery of the weeping over our errors. From this world of exile, we clamor for your love. In the afflictions of the way, in the night most tormenting, your generous fount is the good that shall never dry up. You are in everything the light eternal of joy and peace, our door of hope which shall never close. When everything despises us in this world of iniquity, when the tempest comes upon the flowers of illusion, O Father, you are the light divine, the hymn of certainty, overcoming all harshness, overcoming all affliction. On the day of our death, in abandonment or in torment, help us to forget the shadow, the pain, the evil, that in our final moments we may feel the light of life, renewed and forgiven in happy and immortal peace. This is so nice, guys. Let me place here. Then Emmanuel brings us that when Abigail finished her prayer, her face was bathed in tears. Under the soft caresses of her hands, Jazel became still. He died. He had passed away. A snow-like pallor appeared on his corpse-like face, as well as a profound serenity. Sal understood that he was dead. While the young girl from Corinth raised herself carefully as if her brother's body needed all the tenderness of her kind spirit, Sal approached her with a frowning look and said sternly, this is he was very cruel. Abigail, everything has ended and is finished between us as well. The poor creature turned in fear. Then Abigail realized where she was. Everything is finished between us. Why? Suffering should not put true love to flight. Don't you understand? Sa replied. Restored the brown man. Our union has become impracticable. I cannot marry the sister of an enemy of demandable memory for me. It was unfortunate to have chosen this occasion for you to visit here. Jerusalem. I feel ashamed not only before the woman whom I will never be able to marry, but also before my family and friends because of the bitter situation that there that these circumstances have interposed on my path. Abigail was pale and painfully shocked. So we see here that not only Abigail had lost the love that she was always looking for her brother, but she would lose his her chosen one when it comes to being her husband. She lost it all. And this is the point that we want to reach today. Bro, do you want to say something?
Quite a moment uh, we are reading about, and well, I talked about there's so much to talk, but I'd like to focus at the disincarnation phenomenon. Um, Emmanuel wrote about something torn in Stephen's soul. That's when he felt something went like his forces were slipping away. And that reminded me of the Spiritist literature when it when it teaches about disincarnation phenomenon. The perispirit, that which is the material, this material substance that kind of surrounds the spirit, that gives it some shape and appearance, lives when it the perispirit leaves the body. When it's disconnected, it feels like removing a band-aid. It's like ripping off something attached to the skin. And I thought maybe that's what they meant by something torn in Stephen's soul, that sensation. And he was not completely disincarnated. He was not. Uh, his body was not dead yet. He was connected, but he was starting to feel and experiencing some spiritual events. Other thing is that Stephen felt relieving touches. He saw spiritual emissaries, and he couldn't tell if Abigail was incarnated or not. Well, that means that the weaker the body is, the more emancipated the soul. So when we are asleep, and or when we are deeply sick, when our body is too much weak, the soul can emancipate and experience some sensations from spiritual world, and it all mix with the physical feelings, the sensations of the body, and it all becomes confusing, and the spirit can't tell properly what is spiritual, what is material. And that was what Stephen was experiencing. And he started to remember a series of episodes of his life. And this is brain functions mixed with spiritual phenomena. So we have extreme body condition, extreme weakness in a dying situation, and the soul emancipation at the same time. And that transitory healing of death that happened when he went to the priest's chamber with Abigail and Saul. he had some strength back, and that grants from this is granted from some spiritual mentor, so we can say goodbye to our beloved and calm down the hearts, the troubled hearts around this, the sick people, the sick person who is saying goodbye. And that allows us to go in peace. The thoughts and the pain of everybody around someone who's in the process of disincarnation may cause more disturbance to this harsh event that happens, which is the disconnection between the soul and the physical body. And the spiritual mentors can provide this healing of death, which is transitory but allows to calm down the hearts and everybody say goodbye and be in peace so that this connection may happen more peacefully. This is all so beautiful. It has uh, great logic behind it, so intelligent, and this is why I love Spiritism. I can't uh, see life under a greater perspective. Even when I had to say goodbye to my father last year, Spiritism, this knowledge about Spiritism made all the difference. All the difference. And my wife sometimes she says, "Are you really okay? Because I don't know, my you may be uh, yeah, trying to hide some feelings, some suffering." And I say, "No, no, I am really in peace. And I understand how uh, everything that I learned to this day about Spiritism, and this brings a true peace to the heart, and that's why I admire so much uh, the maturity, the, this spiritual maturity of Abigail and Stephen, bro. That's it.
That's just great. I want to bring some comments as well. I want to bring two questions from the Spirit's book today. I think that it's interesting for us to remember that we have three revelations. So we have Moses, we have Jesus, and then we have Spiritism, and that we are immersed in this third revelation perspective here, since we are talking about a psychographed book. Um, Daniel brought loads of interesting perspectives here when it comes to this moment of death. And the Spirit's Book question 165 brings us something really important and substantial about that. I'm going to read it. And Kardec asks in question 165, does an understanding of Spiritism have any influence on the shorter or longer duration of the confusion that the person may go through when he or she is dying? The answer: it has a very considerable influence, because the Spirit understood what its situation would be beforehand. The practice of good and purity of conscience exerts the most influence. However, this is very meaningful, because as Daniel said, they were going through all those harsh things, all those suffer, and they were still fulfilled with faith and good hopes and much good thoughts, and trusting that they would find Jesus. Especially we're seeing this type of attitude in Jesus. So the Spirit's book brings us that, of course, the knowledge of Spiritism, as Daniel brought his own experience here for us. Of course, it helps. But the practice of good, the purity of heart, that's what exerts the most important influence. And we saw that in Jesus throughout the book. We saw that as he, as I would call you, Jason, as Daniel brought us, Jazel was this very mature and noble spirit. So, of course, at this very harsh moment of death, he would be feeling much peace. Again, we have reached in this book a very important part because Stephen is now dead. So he will go back to the spiritual plane, the spiritual realm, and he will be with Saul and Abigail. We will see that from the spiritual realm. So we are going through this very different perspective right now. We're seeing this much knowledge and preaches and pride that are all come from Judaism, this first revelation, and now in the book we're going to see a very different type of approach. We're going to see that this Christian paradigm will be much more main from now on. And in this sense, I want to read the Spirit's book, question 625. Let me just find it here. I'm almost there. So Kardec asks the spirits, what is the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model? Look at Jesus. That's the answer. Jesus is the highest standard of moral perfection to which humankind may aspire on earth. God offers him as the most perfect model, and the doctrine he taught is the purest expression of God's law because he was animated by the divine spirit and was the purest being that has ever walked on earth. If some of those who claim to teach God's law to humans have sometimes led them astray with erroneous principles, it is because they allow themselves to be dominated by strong earthly sentiments, and because they confused the laws regulating the conditions of the life of the soul with those regulating the life of the body. Many of them presented as divine laws what were really only human laws created to serve their own passions and to dominate others. This is very nice, guys, because from this part of the book on, we will see this huge change of paradigm. With Stephen in the spiritual realm, we will see that all of them that are left on earth, they will feel much more close to Christ. And this will change the entire perspective, and this will change the characters. Abigail will become a Christian. Saul Tarsus, we all know his history from the Bible. So the book, it's really interesting for us to notice this in this study perspective that we are here in which we are here, because we are seeing this getting different and differing our perspective as we go through the book. We were seeing the first revelation. Now we are in the main part of the change to the second revelation, which is the Christ. And the Christ is our whole model of purity and love here on earth. And then as we go to the end of the book, and we are in this very important point, we'll see much more aspects of the third revelation, which is Spiritism. And of course, as I said before, we are already inserted in this perspective because we are studying a psychographed book here. This point that we are tonight is really important. It brings us loads of moral questions and reflections. And Daniel brought something that is really important when we are reflecting on this book, bringing us the third revelation, which is we are seeing spirits, and Daniel told us that they are mature, noble spirits. We're seeing those spirits that go through the harsh things on earth, that amount of suffer. We're seeing Abigail losing her brother, and then she will, as we've seen today, lose the love of her life, but they still get this peace of mind. And when we see this, of course, we saw Jazel and Abigail working a lot on building this love perspective on their hearts. But it's really important for us to notice that they had already an amount of knowledge. And when we think, and since we are bringing a couple of concepts tonight, when we think about Spiritism in the definition of being the consoler promised by Christ for us, that is the main point why Spiritism is the consoler. And we see that in practice with these characters, because Spiritism bring us all this amount of knowledge, and Daniel brought his experience. It's very nice. We hadn't agreed on talking about that, and still he brought and complimented me and open this time to reflection. When we think about Spiritism as this amount of knowledge that teaches us those laws that regulate our relations with spirituality, we do feel more comforted. We do have much more things to have faith on. And then we can go ahead in life being more consolated. This is the meaning of Spiritism in this concept of being the consoler promised by Jesus. This is beautiful. And in this book, when we reach this moment where Stephen dies and we see him so resigned and full of faith, we see that the book brings us all the perspectives about Spiritism. This is very powerful, but very, very beautiful. I have finished tonight. I don't know, bro, do you want to say something else?
It's interesting to think that they lived. Um, we are studying under the perspective of a third revelation. People who lived the shock of the second revelation. It's a very, uh, I can't find the words now, but so interesting. So that's powerful. It's a great thing we are doing here.
Yes, I agree. That's very powerful. We always have to be so grateful for Chico's psychographed work, because it brings us this amount of books through which we can have these amazing reflections. So, bro, are you done tonight? Do you want to say something else?
I'm done. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
God
you.
bless you all. Thanks.
Guys, as we have talked before, for a couple of weeks we are doing shorter programs. Nora is not here tonight, but she will be here with us next week. Um, and ahead in a couple of weeks that are coming, we're going back to those 1 hour programs, okay? To 50 to 1 hour programs. I think everybody, especially my friend that is here with me helping and studying, thank you guys so much. The study, as we always say, it will be here for those brothers and sisters that watch on demand on YouTube channel or on Facebook, on those Facebook pages. I thank you guys so much. Very grateful. This book brings me loads of profound reflection and much emotion. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, bro. See you next week, okay?
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you guys, everybody
Bye
that is
bye.
here with us. We're reading the comments. Thank you guys so much. Bye bye.